The starship Celestial Horizon glided through the inky void, its crystalline hull reflecting pinpricks of distant starlight. Captain Krelax settled into the command chair, six-fingered hands dancing across holographic control interfaces that hummed with soft bioluminescent energy. This was supposed to be a routine exploration mission: map an uncharted system, conduct preliminary resource assessments, perhaps claim a new territory for the Zortak Collective. Initial long-range scans had shown nothing remarkable, just another unremarkable star system with a mix of rocky planets, gas giants, and asteroid fields. The kind of celestial real estate that had become increasingly rare as galactic civilizations expanded and claimed their territories. Yet something felt different about this system. An almost imperceptible vibration from through the ship's hull, a sensation that made the fine sensory tendrils along Krelax's spine quiver with an emotion somewhere between excitement and apprehension. "Sensor analysis," the captain called out. "Give me a detailed breakdown of the system's energy signatures." Senior sensor technician Mirek adjusted several crystalline data projectors, her specialized sensory apparatus extending from her temples and connecting directly to the ship's scanning systems. Her breath caught in her throat. "Captain, I'm detecting anomalous energy readings that don't conform to any known stellar or planetary emission patterns. The readings are mathematical, artificially precise." The bridge crew fell silent. In thousands of years of galactic exploration, the Zortak had encountered numerous alien civilizations, but truly artificial energy signatures remained rare. Most technological emissions were chaotic, entropic, a natural byproduct of technological development. These readings were different. They were clean, structured, almost like a complex mathematical equation made visible through energy patterns. "Zoom in on the third planet," Krelax commanded, leaning forward. The holographic display shifted, revealing a world that looked deceptively ordinary at first glance. Rocky, partially covered in liquid water. Atmospheric composition within standard habitable ranges. But as the sensors penetrated deeper, strange details emerged. Geometric formations that were too perfect to be natural. Energy conduits running beneath the planetary surface in patterns that suggested intentional design. "Impossible," muttered the ship's xenogeologist. "Those subsurface structures cannot be geological formations." A sudden burst of electromagnetic energy erupted from the planet's surface, momentarily blinding the ship's sensors. When the interference cleared, a message cut through their communication systems. The language was initially incomprehensible, a series of mathematical sequences that their translation matrices struggled to process. Then, slowly, the universal translation algorithms began to resolve the message. The words formed with clinical precision. "Unidentified vessel. You are approaching a restricted zone. Immediate withdrawal is required." The bridge temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Krelax had commanded exploration vessels for over 2 solar cycles and had never encountered such a direct, unequivocal warning. No diplomatic preamble. No attempt at communication beyond the bare minimum required to convey a critical instruction. "Options?" the captain asked, looking around the bridge. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Turning back would mean returning to the collective in failure. Advancing would mean direct confrontation with an unknown technological presence that had already demonstrated capabilities far beyond their understanding. Mirek's sensory tendrils twitched. The energy signatures. They're not just monitoring us. They're analyzing us. Completely. Before anyone could respond, a massive shadow began to emerge from behind the planet's largest moon. Sleek, angular, utterly alien in its geometric perfection, and it was heading directly toward the celestial horizon. First contact was about to become something entirely. The approaching vessel defied every known principle of spaceship design. Its hull seemed to shimmer and shift, not through any visible camouflage technology, but as if the very molecular structure responded to some unseen environmental stimulus. Captain Krelax watched in horrified fascination as the ship's contours remained razor-sharp yet somehow fluid, cutting through the starfield like a living mathematical equation. Defensive systems, Krelax barked, full activation protocol. The celestial horizon's shield generators hummed to life, a complex lattice of energy fields that had protected Zortak vessels through countless encounters. Each layer represented centuries of technological refinement: quantum-locked particles, gravitational distortion matrices, plasma absorption membranes. They were the pinnacle of defensive engineering. Senior Tactical Officer Vrentok's hands danced across the control interface. Shields at maximum capacity, weapon systems charged and targeted. But something was wrong. The human vessel made no aggressive movements. It simply existed, a silent predator that seemed more interested in observation than confrontation. Sensor readings flickered wildly. Every time the Zortak ship's computers attempted to lock onto the vessel's precise location, the data would shift, rendering their targeting systems momentarily useless. "It's analyzing our systems," Mirek whispered, her sensory tendrils fully extended and trembling. "Not just scanning. Analyzing. Learning." A communication channel opened. No visual transmission. Just a series of complex mathematical sequences that their translation matrices struggled to interpret. When the translation finally stabilized, the message was chillingly direct. "Final warning. Prepare evacuation procedures. You have precisely 17 standard minutes to clear this sector." The bridge crew exchanged looks of confusion and rising panic. 17 minutes. Not an invitation to diplomatic dialogue. Not a request for identification or purpose. A countdown. A clinical, emotionless instruction that carried the weight of an imminent, unavoidable consequence. Vrentok's tactical display began to show something truly terrifying. The human vessel wasn't just passively scanning their systems. It was actively mapping every single defensive and offensive capability of the celestial horizon. Shield harmonics, weapon charge rates, energy distribution networks, emergency system backups. Each subsystem was being dissected and understood with impossible speed and precision. "Captain," Vrentok's voice cracked, "our most advanced defensive protocols are being rewritten, not attacked. Rewritten." The ship's internal systems began to respond to commands that hadn't been input. Emergency protocols shifted. Backup systems reconfigured. It was as if the human vessel was teaching their own technology how to function more efficiently, more precisely. Krelax gripped the command chair's armrests. The temperature on the bridge had dropped several degrees. The usual background hum of ship systems had been replaced by an eerie, almost musical undertone, a sound that suggested complex computational processes happening far beyond their comprehension. "Prepare evacuation pods," the captain ordered, each word measured and controlled. "But do not, under any circumstances, initiate any defensive or offensive actions." Something in the tactical officer's display caught Vrentok's attention. "Captain, they're not just blocking our weapon systems. They're redesigning them. Our plasma cannons, our quantum disruptors, the entire weapon architecture is being recompiled into something we don't recognize." The human vessel continued its silent approach. No weapon ports were visible. No energy signatures suggested imminent attack. It was simply there, a geometric nightmare that seemed to exist between the conventional understanding of space, technology, and threat. 17 minutes began to feel like an eternity. 17 minutes to understand that they were facing something far beyond a conventional military encounter. 17 minutes to realize that humanity represented a technological paradigm they had never imagined possible. Chief Science Officer Draken hunched over the rapidly mutating sensor displays, her specialized neural interface struggling to process the impossible data streaming before her eyes. What had begun as a standard computational analysis had transformed into something that challenged the very foundation of Zortak's scientific understanding. The human vessel's technological approach defied every known principle of quantum mechanics, computational theory, and spatial interaction. It wasn't simply advanced, it was fundamentally different. Each microsecond brought new revelations that shattered existing scientific paradigms. "Look at the computational matrix," Draken muttered, her voice a mix of professional analysis and barely contained awe. Holographic projections danced around her, showing layers of data that seemed to breathe and shift like living organisms. The ship's defensive systems were being deconstructed and reimagined in real time, not through brute force hacking, but through a form of technological empathy that suggested a complete reimagining of how technology could interact with physical systems. Mirak, the senior sensor technician, leaned in closer. Her sensory tendrils, typically used for precise electromagnetic detection, were vibrating with an intensity that suggested pure intellectual excitement. "It's not just analyzing our systems," she whispered. "It's understanding them at a molecular, almost quantum level that our best researchers couldn't achieve in multiple lifetimes." The computational process was unlike anything in Zortak's scientific records. Traditional technological advancement followed predictable patterns: incremental improvements, iterative design, careful testing. This was different. The human vessel was literally rewriting technological understanding in real time, creating solutions to problems the Zortak didn't even know existed. Their shield technologies, the pride of Zortak engineering, were being systematically mapped, predicted, and neutralized. But it wasn't a violent dismantling. It was more like a patient teacher demonstrating fundamental flaws in a student's understanding of complex mathematics. Draken's neural interface began to show strain. Normally, her enhanced cognitive implants could process billions of computational threads simultaneously. Now they were struggling to keep up with the sheer complexity of the technological interaction happening before her. "Captain," she called out, her voice betraying a hint of professional fear. "Our entire technological foundation is being challenged. Not just our ship's systems, our entire understanding of technological interaction." The holographic displays began to show something truly remarkable. The human vessel was creating computational models that solved multiple layers of complex problems simultaneously. Quantum entanglement, energy distribution, spatial manipulation. Concepts that the Zortak treated as separate scientific disciplines were being integrated into a unified technological approach. Vrentok, the tactical officer, interrupted the scientific revelations. "The weapon systems, they're not just being disabled, they're being reimagined." Indeed, the ship's offensive capabilities were transforming. Plasma cannons that once represented the pinnacle of Zortak military technology now appeared crude, almost primitive. The human vessel was creating computational models that could redirect energy, manipulate spatial fields, and generate defensive capabilities from what would have previously been considered offensive systems. "It's like watching someone rewrite the fundamental laws of technological interaction," Mirak said, her voice a mixture of terror and profound respect. The neural interfaces of the bridge crew began to show signs of extreme stress. Computational pathways that had been stable for generations were being challenged, rewritten, completely reimagined. It wasn't just a technological encounter. It was a fundamental philosophical challenge to how they understood technology, science, and the interaction between intelligent systems. Draken's final analysis came as a whispered revelation. They're not just technologically advanced. They've developed an entirely different approach to understanding technological interaction. Our technology is a language. Theirs is a living, adaptive system that learns and grows with each interaction. The human vessel continued its silent approach, each moment revealing layers of technological complexity that made the Zortak's most advanced systems look like primitive children's toys. This was more than a first contact scenario. This was a complete reimagining of technological potential. The moment of decisive action arrived with a precision that defied conventional understanding of warfare. No thunderous explosions, no dramatic energy discharges, just a cascading wave of computational deconstruction that moved through the celestial horizon like a surgeon's scalpel through delicate tissue. Captain Krelax watched in horrified fascination as the ship's most critical systems began to systematically dissolve. It wasn't destruction, It was a calculated, almost surgical dismantling of technological capability. The first wave targeted the navigation systems. Quantum-locked guidance matrices that had been the pride of Zortak engineering began to unravel, not through brute force attack, but through a method that seemed to understand and then systematically neutralize each computational pathway. Star charts dissolved. Positional tracking systems became nothing more than meaningless data streams. The ship's ability to navigate became as useful as a map made of water. Tactical Officer Vrentok's hands moved frantically across the control interfaces, but each attempted override was anticipated and neutralized before it could even fully form. "They're not just blocking our systems," he muttered. "They're teaching our own technology how to become inert." Communication networks collapsed next, but it wasn't a simple jamming of signals. Instead, the communication arrays were transformed into a complex web of computational dead ends. Each attempt to send a message, to call for help, to even understand what was happening, was gently but firmly redirected into meaningless computational loops. Draken, the chief science officer, watched her sensor displays with a mixture of professional terror and scientific fascination. "It's a form of technological aikido," she explained to no one in particular. "They're using our own technological momentum against us. Each defensive action we take is instantaneously analyzed, understood, and then neutralized." Shield generators were next. The complex layers of energy protection, quantum-locked particles, gravitational distortion matrices, plasma absorption membranes, began to dissolve, not through violent disruption, but through a method that seemed to understand each layer's fundamental computational logic and then simply unmake it. The precision was almost beautiful in its clinical perfection. Emergency backup systems activated automatically, as they were designed to do. But here, too, the human vessel was several computational steps ahead. Each backup system was instantaneously mapped, understood, and rendered inert before it could provide any meaningful resistance. "We're not being attacked," Mirek whispered, her sensory tendrils trembling. "We're being studied, neutralized, like a complex biological specimen being prepared for microscopic analysis." Power distribution networks began to collapse, not in a catastrophic explosion, but in a systematic shutdown that preserved the ship's structural integrity. It was as if the human vessel was ensuring that the Zortak crew would survive to witness their technological defeat. Weapon systems were the final target. Plasma cannons, quantum disruptors, gravitational compression arrays, each represented generations of military technological development. They were reduced to nothing more than inert metal and computational ghosts in a matter of moments. The entire process took less than 17 standard minutes. 17 minutes to completely neutralize a technologically advanced starship. 17 minutes to demonstrate a level of technological superiority that made the Zortak's most advanced systems look like primitive toys. 17 minutes to rewrite the entire understanding of technological potential. On the bridge, an eerie silence descended. No alarms blared. No emergency systems activated. Just a perfect, clinical neutralization of every offensive and defensive capability. Captain Krelax understood then that this was more than a military encounter. This was a fundamental demonstration of technological philosophy. The human vessel hadn't destroyed them. It had simply rendered them completely and utterly inconsequential. A new message appeared on the primary communication display. Simple, direct, precise. Vessel neutralized. Prepare for next phase of interaction. The escape pods drifted through the vast emptiness of space, each one a fragile capsule of survival. Captain Krelax's pod contained 12 of the Celestial Horizon's senior crew members, a microcosm of their once proud exploration vessel, now reduced to floating survivors. Initial panic had given way to a strange, numbing silence. Their technological superiority had been stripped away so completely that the very concept of their civilization's advancement now seemed like a child's naive fantasy. Suddenly, precise tractor beams engage. Not the violent, crushing implements of conquest they had anticipated, but gentle guidance systems that maneuvered each escape pod with surgical precision. The pods were not destroyed, not redirected, simply collected. They were brought into a massive docking bay that defied conventional design principles. The interior was a study in clinical perfection. Surfaces that seemed to adapt and shift, responding to environmental conditions in ways that suggested a living, breathing technological ecosystem. Decontamination protocols activated the moment the first pod's airlock opened. Instead of harsh chemical sprays or radiation treatments, a series of quantum-level scanning beams passed through their bodies. The process was instantaneous, painless, and revealed a level of medical understanding that made their own advanced healing technologies look primitive. Medical staff awaited them. Not warriors, not interrogators, but researchers dressed in adaptive environmental suits that seemed to breathe and move with an almost organic fluidity. Their approach was neither threatening nor submissive, simply professional and intensely curious. Species. Zortak, one of the researchers spoke, their voice translated through a device that seemed to understand linguistic nuance at a near telepathic level. Preliminary biological assessment indicates minimal risk. Proceed with standard first contact protocols. Captain Krelax found herself in a medical examination room that was more reminiscent of an advanced research laboratory than a containment facility. Holographic displays surrounded her, tracking every biological metric with a precision that was both terrifying and fascinating. Mirak, the senior sensor technician, whispered to the captain, "They're not treating us like prisoners. We're more like research subjects." The examination was comprehensive yet surprisingly gentle. Complex scanning beams mapped their biological systems, quantum-level analyzers studied their cellular structures, and adaptive medical interfaces monitored their physical and psychological responses in real time. Physiological stress levels elevated, another researcher noted, implementing neural calming frequency modulations. A gentle electromagnetic field enveloped the room. The crew's anxiety, a tight knot of fear and confusion, began to dissipate, not through forced pacification, but through a sophisticated understanding of neurological responses. Chief Science Officer Draken found herself engaged in a series of non-verbal communication tests that challenged every understanding of interspecies interaction. Complex mathematical sequences, spatial reasoning challenges, and abstract problem-solving scenarios were presented through holographic interfaces. They're not interrogating us, Draken realized. They're studying us, trying to understand our cognitive processes. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time seemed to lose meaning in this environment of perpetual scientific observation. The human researchers moved with a precision that suggested each action was part of a complex, interconnected research methodology. Tactical Officer Vrentak underwent a series of technological compatibility tests that made him question everything he understood about human technological capabilities. His neural interfaces were studied, mapped, and then gently recalibrated, not to control, but to understand. A breakthrough came during one of the communication attempts. A researcher approached Krelax with a device that seemed to translate not just language, but intent. Emotional nuance, the subtle layers of communication that typically get lost in translation. "We mean you no harm," the translation device conveyed. "You have entered a zone of critical scientific importance. Your presence here is an opportunity for mutual understanding." The statement hung in the air, part warning, part invitation, completely unlike any first contact scenario in Zortak historical records. Krelax understood then that they were not prisoners, not guests. They were participants in a form of scientific interaction that transcended traditional concepts of diplomacy, warfare, or exploration. They had encountered something fundamentally different. The interrogation room defied every expectation of a conventional interview space. Holographic displays shimmered with complex data streams. Adaptive environmental controls maintained a perfect balance of comfort and cognitive stimulation. Captain Krelax sat across from a human researcher whose presence seemed to radiate an intensity of intellectual focus that was almost physical. Your arrival was not unexpected. The researcher began, their translation device capturing not just words, but layers of contextual meaning. This sector represents a critical point of scientific and strategic importance. Drakan, the chief science officer, leaned forward. Her scientific curiosity was beginning to overcome her initial fear. What makes this sector so significant? The holographic displays around them transformed. Molecular diagrams, cosmic radiation patterns, and complex spatial models began to dance in three-dimensional space. It was less a presentation and more an immersive educational experience that challenged the very foundations of their understanding. The researcher explained a concept that seemed to exist between scientific research and cosmic preservation. This sector was more than a simple restricted zone. It was a carefully maintained buffer, a critical point of observation for a phenomenon that threatened multiple galactic civilizations. Imagine a cosmic threat, the researcher said, that exists beyond traditional understanding of physical laws. Not a simple stellar event, not a conventional astronomical danger, but a fundamental disruption of spatial-temporal integrity that could unravel entire sections of the known universe. The holographic displays showed cascading models of potential cosmic catastrophes, quantum instabilities, dimensional fractures, spatial anomalies that could propagate faster than light, consuming entire galactic regions in moments of computational dissolution. We are not a military civilization, the researcher continued. We are a preservation network. Our primary function is to understand, contain, and if possible, prevent cosmic-level threats. Tactical Officer Vrentok found himself struggling with the implications. Their entire understanding of human civilization, built on intercepted communications, historical data, and strategic projections, was fundamentally incorrect. The interview was not an interrogation. It was a comprehensive knowledge exchange. Complex mathematical sequences were shared, technological methodologies compared. The humans demonstrated a level of scientific understanding that transcended individual disciplines. Physics, biology, computational theory. These were not separate fields, but integrated layers of a unified approach to understanding universal complexity. Your civilization approached this sector, the researcher explained, without understanding the delicate balance we maintain. The neutralization of your vessel was not an act of aggression. It was a protective measure, both for your species and for the larger cosmic ecosystem we monitor. Mirak, the senior sensor technician, asked the question burning in everyone's mind. Why not simply destroy us? The response was both simple and profound. Destruction is a failure of understanding. Every species represents a unique computational and biological perspective. Elimination removes potential solutions to complex problems. The humans shared glimpses of their broader mission. They were not conquerors, not explorers in the traditional sense. They were a distributed network of researchers, scientists, and preservationists who viewed the universe as a complex, interconnected system that required constant, delicate maintenance. Their technological capabilities were not about military superiority. They were tools of understanding, of preservation, of maintaining a cosmic balance that most civilizations couldn't even comprehend. Your arrival here, the researcher said, provides us with new computational perspectives. Your biological and technological approaches offer potential solutions to challenges we have been studying for generations. As the interview progressed, the Zortak crew began to understand that they were witnessing something far beyond a simple first contact scenario. This was an invitation to a broader, more complex understanding of cosmic interaction. The human researchers were not interested in conquest. They were seeking understanding. And in that moment, everything the Zortak thought they knew about technological advancement, space exploration, and the nature of intelligent life began to fundamentally shift. The holographic display transformed into a galactic map that defied conventional cartographic understanding. It was not a static representation, but a living, breathing model of cosmic interactions. Quantum threads connected stellar systems in complex networks that pulsed with mathematical precision, revealing layers of interconnectivity that the Zortak had never imagined possible. What you're witnessing, the human researcher explained, is a comprehensive monitoring system that tracks potential existential threats across multiple dimensional planes. Captain Krelax watched in stunned silence as the display revealed multiple civilizations, some known, many unknown, interconnected through invisible computational networks. These were not simple communication channels. They were complex adaptive systems that seemed to breathe and evolve in real time. The researcher began to explain the true nature of their cosmic preservation mission. Humanity had discovered that the universe was far more fragile and interconnected than any single civilization could comprehend. Cosmic threats weren't always dramatic stellar events or massive invasions. They could be subtle quantum instabilities, dimensional resonance cascades, or computational anomalies that could unravel entire sections of space-time. We are not a singular civilization, the researcher clarified. We are a distributed network of researchers, scientists, and preservation specialists. Our primary objective is maintaining the structural integrity of the cosmic ecosystem. Draken, the chief science officer, found herself struggling to process the complexity of the explanation. The humans weren't just monitoring threats. They were actively maintaining a delicate balance that most civilizations couldn't even perceive. The holographic display showed multiple layers of intervention. Some were massive, redirecting stellar formations to prevent catastrophic collisions. Others were microscopic, adjusting quantum entanglement patterns to prevent dimensional fractures. Each intervention was a precise, calculated action that maintained the broader cosmic balance. Your approach to this sector, the researcher continued, triggered multiple warning protocols. Not because you were a threat, but because you were approaching a critical observation point without understanding its significance. The map revealed something truly remarkable. This sector was more than a simple restricted zone. It was a critical monitoring point for a complex cosmic phenomenon that could potentially destabilize multiple dimensional planes. Tactical Officer Vrentok noticed something extraordinary. The monitoring system wasn't just observing. It was actively maintaining a delicate balance. Quantum threads adjusted stellar formations. Computational matrices redirected potential energy cascades. It was like watching a living, breathing system of cosmic maintenance. We have intervention protocols for multiple scenarios, the researcher explained. Some require complete technological neutralization. Others demand more nuanced approaches. Your vessel's approach triggered our most careful intervention protocols. The humans shared glimpses of other civilizations they had encountered. Some had been guided away from potential cosmic catastrophes. Others had been invited into their preservation network. Each interaction was a carefully calculated intervention designed to maintain the broader cosmic balance. Mirak, the senior sensor technician, asked the question that burned in everyone's mind. How long have you been doing this? The response was both simple and profound. Longer than any single civilization's historical records. We are not bound by traditional concepts of time or individual survival. We are a network. The distributed system of preservation. The holographic display continued to pulse with life. It showed potential futures, branching timelines. Computational models of cosmic interactions that suggested the humans were playing a game of multidimensional chess on a scale that defied comprehension. Your arrival here, the researcher said, provides us with new computational perspectives. Every civilization represents a unique approach to understanding universal complexity. As the explanation continued, the Zortak crew began to understand that they were witnessing something far beyond a simple first contact scenario. This was an invitation to a broader, more complex understanding of cosmic interaction. The humans were not conquerors. They were not even explorers in the traditional sense. They were guardians, maintaining a cosmic balance that most civilizations couldn't even perceive. The offer came not as a command, but as an invitation that challenged everything the Zortak understood about first contact and interstellar cooperation. Some crew members exchanged nervous glances. Others leaned forward with a mixture of scientific curiosity and existential wonder. "You have a choice," the human researcher explained, the translation device capturing nuances of possibility and potential. "Return to your home systems with a comprehensive warning about this sector, or participate in our ongoing research, contributing your unique computational and biological perspectives to our broader mission of cosmic preservation." Captain Krelak studied the holographic displays that continued to pulse with complex mathematical models and cosmic interaction patterns. What had begun as a potentially fatal encounter had transformed into something entirely unexpected. Draken, the chief science officer, was the first to speak. "Our entire understanding of technological interaction has been fundamentally challenged. How could we possibly return to our previous existence?" The research facility seemed to respond to her statement. Holographic interfaces reconfigured, showing potential research paths that integrated Zortak technological approaches with the human preservation network. It was less an invitation and more a recognition of their potential contribution. Tactical Officer Vrentok discovered something profound during the initial integration tests. The humans weren't looking to absorb or replace Zortak technological approaches. They were seeking to understand, to integrate, to create something new from the intersection of different technological perspectives. "We are not a monolithic civilization," the researcher explained. "We are a distributed network of computational approaches. Your unique perspective represents a potential solution to challenges we have been studying for generations." Some crew members chose immediate integration. Neural interfaces were carefully adapted. Computational pathways were gently realigned. It wasn't a violent transformation, but a careful, almost symbiotic process of technological and biological integration. Mirak, the senior sensor technician, found herself at the forefront of a new form of scientific exploration. The research facility was less a fixed location and more a dynamic, adaptive system that responded to new computational inputs. Her sensory capabilities were not replaced, but expanded, integrated into a broader network of cosmic observation. The humans shared glimpses of their broader mission. They weren't just studying cosmic threats. They were maintaining a delicate balance that most civilizations couldn't even perceive. Each integrated perspective, each unique computational and biological approach, represented a potential solution to complex universal challenges. "Imagine," one researcher explained, "a network that doesn't just observe the universe, a network that actively maintains its structural integrity. A distributed system of preservation that transcends individual civilizations." Not all crew members chose to stay. Some felt the transformation was too profound, too challenging to their existing understanding. They would return to Zortak space with a warning, and with data that would fundamentally challenge their civilization's understanding of technological potential. Those who remained began a process of integration that was both terrifying and exhilarating. They were no longer simply Zortak. They were becoming something new, something that existed between their original civilization and this broader cosmic preservation network. The research facility itself seemed to breathe with new potential. Computational matrices adjusted, holographic interfaces reconfigured. It was less a fixed location and more a dynamic, adaptive system that responded to new inputs, new perspectives. Captain Krelak made her decision carefully, not as a military commander, not as an explorer, but as a representative of a potential new approach to understanding universal complexity. "We will contribute," she said finally. The words carried the weight of a fundamental transformation. The human researchers didn't celebrate. They didn't display triumph. They simply continued their work, now with new computational perspectives integrated into their broader network. As the Zortak crew began their integration, they understood something profound. This wasn't a conquest. This wasn't even a traditional first contact scenario. This was an invitation to a broader understanding of cosmic interaction, a recognition that the universe was far more complex, far more interconnected than any single civilization could comprehend, and they were now part of something much larger than themselves.